Testing 1, 2, 3.
You're muted right now, so nothing's coming out.
Testing 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, sure.
Let's go on left.
Hi, good.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, good.
I'm glad.
Yeah, doing well, yeah.
I'm waiting for the day that I get to hear you preach, but when is it going to be?
Everyone's getting a wonderful view of your email.
Well, to be honest, in this day and age, not many personal things come through the email. So.
Good afternoon, my family. Welcome to our worship today. This afternoon we've been having a slight minor technical difficulties, and as Eric and Douglas and I are praying together, we're just reminded that the church has worshiped for thousands of years without technology, without screens and things like that, and so we're not going to let small minor difficulties distract us from why we're here. So if you're in the courtyard, if you want to come in, feel free to find a seat. If you want to stay out there, that's great too. But we're glad that you're here to worship with us together. So let's pray as we enter our time of worship through singing. God, we worship you because you are worthy. You're worthy to be trusted, worthy to be worshipped. You deserve all the praise and glory and honor. Remind us of your holiness, your faithfulness, how you never change. You deserve all glory and honor. We love you, Lord, and we pray this in your name. Amen.
Praise to our God. who worship you. You are the Holy One. All creation cries out to you in praise, Lord. Continue to speak to us, Lord, not just through our worship, but through your word, through our prayer together, our fellowship, Lord. May you be here and be glorified with us. We love you, Lord. We pray all this in your name. Amen.
Welcome to New Vine Community Church. Before you sit down, could you look at your neighbor and say, "Our God reigns." Our God reigns. Welcome once again to New Vine Community Church. It's great to see all of you here, as well as outside in the courtyard and at home as well. So another warm welcome. Last week, flying kids, yes, you're dismissed. Upstairs, have a great time. Last week, we heard from Jake, who's testified to the mighty works of God in West Africa. That was part of our Great Commission Sunday, our focus on missions. I know that many of you want to give to that work and work all around the world. So you're welcome to the Give Vine check. If you do, please write it on to New Vine Community Church in the memo section at GCF, Great Commission Fund. You can also go online through our website, newvine.cc, and giving.
Can you mirror the camera?
There will be a
Because we're not
drop-down
seeing anything
menu
on the live stream and
for
stuff.
Great Commission Sunday.
On the live stream.
We have also been praying for Ukraine,
This is
and we have an opportunity to give to the work that's being done in Kyiv through our Alliance Church partners.
Okay, but I think
In the same way, you could write a check. There's a box in the dock. You want to drop it off. So the memo, right? Ukraine relief. It's also trying to New Vine Community Church. Giving online is also possible. In that same drop-down menu, the Great Commission Sunday, there's Ukraine relief. So that was what we did last week, and we prayed for Ukraine. And we will pray for Ukraine following the service if we have time, or if we don't. Those who want to pray can gather up front, see me up front, and then we can pray together. So next Saturday, we have an event at 11 o'clock. Cafetito Itam. That means little coffee and bread. There we go. You know, it makes me think that similar to dim sum, which means a little bit of your heart, it's not going to be a little bit. It's probably going to be a lot. And you're going to leave stuffed and filled. In this case, this is for our Spanish-speaking family members, brothers and sisters, at 11 o'clock this Saturday at the Panera Bread in Mountain View. That's El Monte and El Camino. Please see Bob and Brenda if you have any questions. And Sergio as well. Thank you. Again, next Saturday. In 4 weeks' time, that's Resurrection Sunday, Easter Sunday. We would like to have a baptism if there's any of you who want to be baptized. This is a chance to show publicly that you want to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. And if you have if you'd like to know more about it, please talk to Pastor Douglas. That's 4 weeks' time. If God has been touching your heart to show publicly that you want to follow Jesus as his disciple, yes, it's a great time to be baptized. And then in 4 months' time, we will be having Vacation Bible in school. And that'll be here. We haven't set up the registration yet, but this is for you to save the date on your calendars. July 18th to the 22nd. Very good. And it's time for the message. Let's welcome Pastor Ted.
Good afternoon, Divine family. It's so great to see all the faces in person, and I know that some people are joining us from online. I just cannot wait until we can all gather together like we used to and have a meal together and have a real fellowship that is not restricted by our space. So we're getting there. So just hang in there for a few more weeks. For those of you who are new, we're going through a series of teachings on the things concerning the end time. And we started this whole series with Matthew chapter 24, how Jesus teaches about what to expect and why these things must take place. And then the last 4 messages, excluding the one that we heard from our brother Jake, was on the letters that Jesus wrote to the 7 churches. So that's in Revelation chapter 2 and 3. If I can just really summarize what the letter is about, it's really the vision of Christ for his bride. In the very first message, I talked about how, as Jesus talks about the end time, we get so fixated on when these things will happen or what is going to happen. But the more important matter that Jesus wanted to convey in his message is why these things must happen. And the reason was that through all these world events that we're going through right now, Jesus is producing or birthing people. And that is the church, that is the bride. So these letters serve as what kind of people that Jesus is really pleased with and what kind of people that are actually being produced. So that was really the content of those letters. And in those letters, there were some praises as well as admonitions. But today, we're going to move into the vision of our future. This is the vision that God wants to give to us. And again, I want to be very honest with you. I love the book of Revelation, but I also have a little bit of apprehension because this is a hard book. This is a challenge for any preachers because there are a lot of symbolism and there are a lot of cryptic things that we cannot fully understand. And as much as I love to read this book, over and over again, there are still things that I feel like is still veiled to me, that I cannot fully understand. But there are things that God has revealed to us. And I think we're going to grow in our revelation as we mature in Christ.
Unfortunately, we need Kelvin to debug this.
What we're going to be looking at least for today and moving forward, is the vision of our future. So in Revelation chapter 4, this is right after John actually delivered the message to the 7 churches. We don't have the screen, so I'll just read it for us. It says, "After this I looked, and there before me was a door standing open in heaven, and the voice like a trumpet said, 'Come up here. I will show you what must take place after this.'" Wouldn't you love to have an invitation like this? If you can just have an open vision of what our future is going to be like. Whether it's like looking into a screen or having a vision before our eyes, John gets to have that privilege. But the good news is that it's not just John who sees this vision. God actually wanted to share this vision with us so we get to experience and we get to see the same thing that John saw 2,000 years ago. That will prepare us how to really live through this, what we call the end of the age or end time. So the rest of the book is really what he saw, what John saw as the vision for not just his own future, but future for the church, future for the saints, and what must happen near the end of this age. And again, a lot of the descriptions and the imageries are very cryptic. It could be very confusing. Even the way John explains, you can tell that he has no equivalence to what actually he's seeing. That's why he'll use whatever he knows, like the color of the gems, or he will use this language or imagery that sounds very, very foreign to us. And the reason is that there's really nothing that is equivalent to what actually he's seeing in this vision. So before we go on, I want to focus on chapter 4 and 5 because this is such a crucial vision that we must capture. But before we do that, I'm going to briefly explain just the rest of the book. again, I don't intend to go through chapter by chapter trying to really dig out all the details, but I think we need to have a bigger picture of actually what is going to happen and what John is really trying to explain through this series of visions that he saw. So if you read Revelation chapter 6 through 20, this is really the gist or the summary of how these things will unfold. Now, if I were to ask any average Christians today, do you know or do you have a prophetic picture of your future? Do you understand what is going to happen near the end time? What our eternal destiny is actually going to look like and how that is going to come about? Most Christians will have a very, very simplistic answer about our future. You believe in Jesus, you join a local church, and you just show up every Sunday, you serve God until you die, and when you die, your body will return to the dust, and your spirit will go to heaven, and you'll be with Jesus. And then when Jesus comes back, He's going to give us a new body, a resurrected body, and then our spirit will be united with this new body, and then we will live happily ever after. That's kind of a typical understanding of this Christian belief about our future, our prophetic future. Now, it's not wrong. We got some pieces there right. But let me tell you, at least according to what John sees and how he explains how this future is going to unfold, that understanding, that simplistic view of our future is awfully inadequate to really describe what we're made for, what we're supposed to be doing for the rest of eternity. So this is why we have the book of Revelation, and this is why Jesus says those who read the words of this book are blessed. Because it actually does contain certain things, our hope, blessed hope, that we are supposed to actually hold on to. So what I'm going to explain, again, we don't have time to go into all the details, but as you read through these things, I'm hoping that your heart will be encouraged. But at the same time, I have to warn you, there are a lot of terrible things that are written in some of these preceding chapters, especially starting from chapter 6. So, John, actually, what he sees in this vision, it starts with 21 judgments. These are broken up into kind of 3 sections. So John actually sees first 7 seals, which we're going to see in chapter 4 and 5 today. These 7 seals appear in chapter 6, and then he talks about 7 trumpets, which is in chapter 8 and onward. And then he goes on to talk about the vision of the 7 bowls, which actually contains God's wrath, or probably a better way to put it is God's justice. 15 and onward. These are not good things. It's actually very, very scary and terrifying. So let me just briefly mention some of those things. It talks about how Antichrist will be released on earth. Again, we'll probably have a sermon reserved just to talk about who this Antichrist is. But the best way to interpret this Antichrist, the word anti, is actually another way to translate it as instead. So whenever you think about Antichrist, we're talking about another alternative Christ figure. Who seems like a Messiah, who seems to bring all the solutions that we need in this life, and will probably offer prosperity and health and all kinds of blessings, and yet is compelling enough that many people will actually follow this instead Christ figure. In fact, Paul talks about we've already had many instead Christ or antichrists that have come to lure away people from Christ. So it's almost like a counterfeit Christ who's going to reign over this world. And then he talks about the wars that are going to happen among the nations. And then there's this famine that breaks out. And then talks about this great persecution of God's people that's actually going to lead to this great martyrdom. People are going to lose their life because of their faith, and then the 7 seals actually end with this great earth shake that is going to shake the whole world. So that's the events of 7 seals. And then he talks about 7 trumpets. it begins with this massive environmental disaster. It says 1/3 of all the vegetations of the earth, trees and grass, will be burnt up. And then 1/3 of the creatures, animals, will perish. Talks about 1/3 of waters, the fresh water will be polluted, and then demons will be released to torment people, and eventually at the end of this period of 7 trumpets, 1/3 of mankind will die. Scary. Yeah. And then the last part is the 7 bowls. This is really the beginning of the end of it all. Talks about how the suns, actually multiple suns or planets, will actually burn and scorch people. It will actually bring complete darkness over the face of the earth. Rivers and seas will be dried up. We're talking about cataclysmic environmental disasters that will actually destroy the whole world. Now, as you read about these things, even 20, 30 years ago, they seem such far-fetched ideas, even for me as a Christian. Now, having lived through the last couple of years, and last several actually years, we realize that these are actually not far-fetched imaginations, and we see how these things actually are accelerating towards these kind of prophesied events. And it's becoming more of a possibility than someone's imagination. And then it talks about great persecution and suffering once again. Again, we don't know all the little details of how these things will unfold, but what God is really showing us is that we must go through these seasons that are marked by disasters and suffering. And what God is going to accomplish during those years is that it's actually going to expose what is in the intent of our hearts, the true intention of the mankind. It'll expose those people who truly follow and love the Lord versus those people who are following their own desires and ambitions and fleshly longings. Finally, after all these things, we have this event where Jesus is actually coming back in the fullness of His glory. And then again, this is a debatable event in terms of timing and how it is going to happen. But we're part of a movement that still strongly believes that Jesus, when He comes back, He will take us up into the air. This is based on 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. Even though this is one time that it talks about rapture, it is a reality. It is a promise that Jesus gave to His people. That we will be caught up in the air to meet Him. And then we will unite with Him. And this is the event that is known to us as raptures. And then, for the first time, Satan is removed from the earth. This world that we live in. And then Jesus is going to establish 1,000 years of His rule and reign right here on earth. Now, I know that there are some Christians who do not believe in this whole millennial kingdom. But I am convinced, based on my research and what I've read in the scriptures, there's really no way to eliminate this beautiful part of the promise where we will actually get to reign with Jesus for 1,000 years. And this is talking about all of the saints who believed in Jesus, who will be part of that first resurrection. Will be resurrected and will reign with Christ. And then, near the end of the book of Revelation, Jesus actually talks about how Satan will be released once again on earth for one last time. And then he will actually be able to gather up an army around himself, and he will try to have one final rebellion against God and His people. And that is the battle that is known to us as the Battle of Armageddon. It's in the book of Revelation. Again, I won't go into all the details, but it is there. Now, I want to briefly explain why this is important. Why would God actually allow Satan to come back after being bound for 1,000 years, that He would actually have him come back and have this one final rebellion? And I did not understand until I learned about this through just reading of many different places. But I believe this is the reason. God has to prove to the world that human heart is still corruptible in the absence of evil. The flip side of that is, we cannot simply blame Satan for our fall, our depravity, our rebellion. Yes, Satan had a part in it. He deceived the first mankind, and we all fell, and he had a reign over this entire world. But we, on that day, when we stand before the Lord, we cannot blame Satan for the things that we have committed, or the things that we have been deceived into. Because God will hold, He will have to hold everyone responsible. And we are responsible for our own doing, our own sin. So I really believe that this is the reason why God has to release Satan for one last time and see who will really be the people that actually belong to the Lord. And then there will come the second resurrection. And this is when all the dead will be raised once again for this final judgment before the great white throne. Now, I really debated whether to share this with you or not, because I know that there are many people who are kind of in the beginning of your Christian walk with the Lord, and this could be really confusing. This could go right over your head. And I know that some of you have really studied this and have understood some of these events, but the reason why I'm sharing this with you is that we cannot settle for this very simplistic view of heaven and hell and our eternal future. There are actually some things that Christ has revealed to us through His revelation. And my goal is to at least stir up some hunger in you, to really research and study and ask the Lord to reveal these things to us, because His heart is to reveal, unveil these things before our eyes. So, all of this is really what comes as this, what John was invited to see. I'll explain, I'll show you what must happen after this. And what I just shared with you is the content of what John saw. And then the last 2 chapters is really about the new heaven and new earth. Now again, this is why many Christians believe that if we just believe in Jesus and live a reasonably good life, we're going to end up in heaven. That's our final destiny. Again, that's not what the Bible teaches. It might even sound like a heresy, but what the Bible actually promises is that when we reign with Christ, when He comes to judge the world, and when He establishes His kingdom, it's actually the new heaven and new earth will come to earth. Here in this place. This is our final destination. This is where He's going to rebuild and restore this new heaven and new earth, new city, new Jerusalem that He talks about. If you have a hard time believing it, please go back and read Revelation chapter 21 and 22. And it talks about the beauty, the glory of this new city that is going to be established forever. And He'll be with His people, and we will be with Him. He'll be our God. And that is the grand ending or grand beginning of our eternal destiny. So, today, all of this is really to introduce the vision that John sees in chapter 4 and 5. Before John sees all these terrible things that we read about, all the seals and the trumpets and the bowls, and God's wrath being poured out, His justice being executed here in this world, John has to see another vision. In chapter 4. In fact, before he saw anything, this unveiling of our future does not start with what is going to happen. It actually starts with what is happening right now. Where? In the throne room of God. I don't know if you understand that even in this moment, in this very moment where we're gathered here, there is actually another reality that's happening before the throne of God. This is probably the center of all cosmic reality, physical, metaphysical, supernatural. I don't know how many of us live with this awareness that there's another place where all of our reality is being shaped and determined, and there's someone who's sitting at the throne in absolute control over all of our reality. That is the vision that John has to see before he sees anything else. All these destructions, all this wrath would not make any sense unless he sees who is at the center of all of this. I don't have to really try to explain or convince you the significance of this throne. It means that there's someone of authority who sits there and who is actually in absolute control. That's what John sees in this vision of chapter 4. We're not going to read through it today. And it is really reminding us and encouraging us and comforting us that we have a God who has actually never lost control over our reality. When you think of the war in Ukraine right now, or the earthquake that happened in Japan this week, or last week, this worldwide pandemic that we're going through, do you really believe that all of these things that are happening around us is within God's rule and reign, under His sovereign control? Just a few moments ago, we sang a song about God reigns, how our God reigns. The question is, we all believe conceptually that God reigns, but my question to you is that how much control? Is it some? Some are outside of His control. Oftentimes, this is our belief is also expressed in our prayer. You know, a lot of times we feel like we're praying to God as if He really does not understand what we're going through, and we have to tell Him what is happening. And we have to tell Him what to do. It's actually the other way around. If we truly saw this vision that John is seeing right now, we see this picture of God at the center of all of our reality, all the cosmic reality that we are not even aware of, and yet He is the ultimate authority. He's the one who is sovereign over all these things. And that's the first vision that John has to see. He's teaching us there is a seat of authority that all of the universe must answer to. And God is at the center of it. In this vision, in chapter 4, we don't see God running around frantically trying to solve all the problems of this world. He's not nervous. He's not anxious. There is actually this very strange picture that John is describing. It says he sees this sea of glass. You know what a sea of glass is? Another translation is glassy sea. This water before the throne is so crystal clear and calm that it's like a film or layer of glass that is perfectly even, that you can see right through it. That's the description of the calmness and the peace of this throne room of God. And the 24 elders are not having a meeting, trying to figure out how to stop the war in Ukraine or how to prevent our economy from falling apart or to bring this pandemic to an end. That's not happening in the throne room. What are they doing before the throne of God? They are worshiping. Some of the songs that we sang and we're going to be singing today, this is part of this worship that is happening. It says that the elders are holding harp in one hand. It's an instrument of praise. And then on the other hand, they're holding the incense, the bowls of incense, which is the prayers of the saints. Here's an encouraging thing that sometimes you feel like I'm praying to God and yet I'm not sure if He's listening. Where does all the prayers go? Oftentimes our picture is that God, imagine hundreds of millions of people praying to God all at the same time. How does God answer all of those prayers? Is He running around trying to figure out what to do? Or commanding the angels to go and do this or do that? No, that's not the picture according to this vision. It says all of our prayers are being stored up in these bowls of incense. And then there's one more vision that I want to share with you, and then we'll bring it to a close. In this throne room, as he enters this throne, there's one more vision, and this vision is a scroll. We're going to read this, actually. If we have Revelation chapter 5, we're just going to read from 1 through verse 10. Just read with me. Actually, I don't have the scripture in front of me. Let's go ahead and just maybe Lee. Let's just all do it in one way, starting from verse 1. Okay, go.
Then I saw the right hand of him who sat on the throne, a scroll with writing on both sides and sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a mighty angel proclaiming in a loud voice, "Who is worthy to break the seals and open the scroll?" That no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth could open the scroll or even look inside it. I wept and wept because no one was found who was worthy to open the scroll or look inside. Then one of the elders said to me, "Do not weep. See, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has triumphed. He is able to open the scroll and its 7 seals." Then I saw a lamb, looking as if it had been slain, standing at the center of the throne, encircled by the 4 living creatures and elders. The lamb had 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth. He went out from the right hand of him who sat on the throne. And when he had taken it, the 4 living creatures, the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb.
Each one had a harp, and they were holding golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of God's people. And they sang a new song, saying, "You are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals, because you were slain. And with your blood you purchased for God persons from every tribe and language and people and nation. You have made them to be a kingdom and priests to serve our God, and they will reign on the earth."
Okay, we'll stop right there. Again, there's this another piece of vision that is really important to all of us. It's the vision of a scroll. Again, it's hard to kind of imagine because we don't use scroll these days, right? The word scroll in the scripture right here is just simply the word biblion or biblia. This is where the word actually Bible comes from. It simply means a book. The problem is that when this book was written, the printing press was not invented. They didn't know how to bind papers to make it into a book. So in those days, books were actually written in the form of scrolls on animal skins. And it's just usually a long pieces of animal skins where you would actually write pieces at a time. That's how Bible was actually written too. So that's really what it means. All there is. I mean, it could have been easily, in modern day analogy, it could have been iPad. Or it could be some electronic form of books, but that's really all it is. So I don't want to dwell too much on, trying to really understand the significance, but it says that this book is actually sealed with 7 seals. Meaning that no one is allowed to open it, no one is allowed to read it. The content of this book is classified. Now scholars have tried to figure out what's written in this book or this scroll. And again, we can make a reasonable guess because there are references later on and even before, but some people will argue that this is really the book of life that Jesus talked about. It contains all the names of those people that are supposed to be saved. Now, this is not a far-fetched idea because again, we don't have time to really study the content and what comes after this, the whole idea of this scroll. But if you want to understand the book of Revelation, you have to read the book of Daniel. And again, I wish we had more time, but we don't. So I'll just briefly mention that tonight, when you go home, or this week, I want to really encourage you to read Daniel's chapter 12. Because Daniel's chapter 12 actually talks about the same scroll. And I believe that this is the same scroll that John is actually seeing right here. This is where the idea that this actually contains the names of those people that are to be saved. Some people will argue that this is actually the events, the future events that John is about to see. They're all recorded, and as this book is opened, that these events will be initiated. Again, that makes sense, because there has to be some sort of written record of what is supposed to happen. Some scholars have argued that this is the title, or deed, the document of ownership over the earth, and Jesus is the one who has laid down his life. And that's how he defeated Satan. And right now, believe it or not, according to the scripture, this world, actually the title or deed belongs to Satan. God has given the dominion over our world, and that's why evil is rampant. And yet, some people believe that this scroll is a document that will actually prove that Jesus now is the rightful owner of this earth. That makes sense too, because people are getting that idea because in Roman days, anything that has to do with titles or ownership, any legal documents were actually sealed with 7 clay seals. And it was not supposed to be broken until the deal is made. So, again, there are all of these ideas about what this scroll might be. Again, I don't have a way of really knowing because God does not reveal those details to us at this point. But I think it's actually all of the above. In fact, it contains so much more than what we are just guessing what this scroll is. What is really, really important for us to really understand is that all of these things that are happening, all the sequences, all the things that we talked about, some of the disasters or catastrophes that are to come, they're actually recorded. And they are sealed. It's contained in this book that John saw. What God is teaching us is that nothing in this world, in this life, in this reality will happen outside of His control. Not an accident. No matter how much you want to control the course of our human history, it is reminding us that Jesus is the one who holds the key. It means that as unstable as this world is, no terrorist group will be able to bring this entire world to an end. No rogue nation with nuclear power will be able to actually destroy this entire world unless it is within the plan of God. It gives us a level of comfort and freedom from fear and anxiety because what God is reminding us that all these things that must happen is within, once again, His sovereign control. And the focal point of this chapter is that there's only one person. Only one person in the entire universe who is worthy to open this scroll. Break the seal and open the scroll. And that is Jesus Christ. The Lamb that was slain. Now what is interesting is that as John entered into this vision, he didn't realize who was worthy. He actually begins to weep. He begins to, it's not just crying, it's not just shedding a few tears. It says that I wept and wept because I thought there's no one who is worthy to open this scroll. Worthy to break the seal. No one in heaven, on earth, or under the earth could open the scroll or even look inside. The last part that I want to talk to you about is why did John actually weep? What caused him such great sorrow? And again, this is where I have to use a little bit of imagination, but there have been many theories. If you read commentaries and books written about the book of Revelation, people talk about why John wept. And again, I think there's a little bit of truth in all of different theories, but we have to really understand, if we want to get into his sorrow and his sadness and his weeping, we have to understand John's life, what he was going through at the time. He was probably in his 90s. Most people date the book of Revelation near the end of his life. He's writing, he's penning these things as he sees the vision that he's actually in imprisonment. He's prisoned on an isle of Patmos, all alone. The city, the beloved city of Jerusalem had fallen. 70 AD. The temple has been destroyed. The symbol of the worshiper has been destroyed. All of his friends, including the disciples who lived 3.5 years of their life and did ministry together, they are now all scattered. Some of them have been killed. And then the church that is planted Now it's just beginning to scatter all over the world because of this great persecution that is breaking out. So for John to see this, we can almost understand what at least John was hoping to find out in that scroll. And when he found out that there was no one who was worthy to open the break the seal, he begins to weep. It shows us, and sometimes I wonder if this is really the picture of our Christian life, how we're supposed to live our lives here in this world. For John, at least in this book, he had very little hope left in this world. It was near the end of his life. He's seen everything. He's seen the persecution. He's seen the suffering of his people. His country, his nation is no more. The only thing that is left for him to hold on to is the next life, the next kingdom that is coming, the one that Jesus promised, the one that he lived for all these years, for decades. Now this is his only hope that is left. And this scroll contains how that kingdom is going to come about. It is actually going to initiate the establishment or the consummation of that kingdom. And for John to not see the one who's worthy to break the seal, it's the end of all hope. And then the elder comes along, one of the elders, 24 elders, says, why are you weeping? There is one who is worthy. There is one who has the right and the authority to break open this scroll and to show us, to initiate, to establish all the things that he promised. He's the one who is worthy to fulfill every promise that God has ever given to him. That is this vision that John is seeing in chapter 5. All the things, all the mystery that we live with, all the unanswered questions, all the pain and the suffering that we have to experience, I really believe that it is actually contained. The answers to those questions are contained in this book. And Jesus says it is sealed before now. And John had to leave. I know that some of you, especially in this season, you're weeping. You're weeping because you follow the Lord all your life. You serve Him. And yet, your life does not make any sense. You still see the suffering. You still see all the grief and all the brokenness of this world around you. And I know you're weeping. And that really is how we're supposed to pass through this season. What God is saying to us, all the questions that you have about your life as well as this world, it is sealed up for now. But I have the right to break open that seal. And one day, I will explain it to you. One day, I'll sit down and wipe away every tears that you shed. And I'll comfort you, I'll heal you. And it will make sense. But right now, let's live it. I have a friend who I have known for probably about good 5 years. It was one of our gatherings of the Alliance family. At the end of one evening, he just grabbed me and he asked me to pray for his wife. His wife had been going through this autoimmune disease for almost 10 years. She had not been able to leave her home. She had been sick, bedridden. The doctors told him that she might die multiple times. So he was really desperate. And you know, that night, I don't know why, I think the Lord just gave me a lot of faith to just really pray for a miraculous healing. So I prayed for him, I prayed for his wife, and then I told him that I would really commit my life to really pray for complete healing. So it's been about 3-4 years since I've been really praying for the healing of his wife. Back in November, I had a chance to go to Ohio, and you know, this was a gathering of all our national office staff, and Sandy and I led a retreat, and he came to this retreat. And the last session, I spoke about faith. And I don't know why, after I delivered the message, I felt like God was just giving me once again the faith just really invite people to make some bold and audacious declaration. So he was the first one to come up. And he declared before the entire staff that I declare that God is going to heal my wife, Joanne. And at that moment, there was this resonance or agreement in my spirit that God was going to do it. What's funny is that week, for the first time in 10 years, his wife actually came out to join us for dinner the first night. She was all dressed up beautifully, wore makeup, and she came out and she greeted everyone, hugged everybody, and we had a wonderful time. And then when Bob came out and just prayed this over his wife, I really believed that he was going to heal her. Fast forward, after that retreat, I go to Italy. And as you know, I had COVID-19, and then I got stuck in Italy. I got the news that there were 7 other people who actually contracted COVID-19 at that retreat, probably at that dinner. And Joanna was one of them. She was immediately hospitalized. Her husband, Bob, also contracted COVID-19. And on Saturday, I got the news that she had passed away. The sad thing is, my heart was broken because he couldn't even be with his wife. The last few precious moments he couldn't be because of COVID-19. So I was just praying, and I remember just being angry with God and just pouring my heart. Back in February when we had our gathering once again, I had a chance to just meet him again, and we went out and we just spent an evening processing, talking about how he's doing. I just listened. I couldn't really say anything to encourage him or comfort him. I just listened, and we laughed together and we cried together, and we just spent the evening just talking about what happened. The conclusion of that evening, our conversation, was this: that our life is both wonder and mystery. God does amazing things sometimes. He answers these audacious prayers, and he does miracles. I've seen so many healing and miracles in people's lives, and yet at the same time, there's part of our life that is a mystery. We don't understand. It was so comforting for me to hear that Bob said that I think God answered our prayer in some way that we did not expect or imagine. Joanna is perfectly healed right now. He's in the presence of Jesus. And yet, the sorrow that we have to go through and the questions that we have to ask going through life, it doesn't make any sense. And yet what Jesus is reminding us today is that one day, I will explain. I am the one who has answers to all of the mystery of this world. And I am the one who is in absolute control over everything that happens in this life, both good and bad. And he will explain how all these things actually work together for the good of those who love him, who are called according to his purpose. That is really the promise, and that is the vision that John sees in chapter 5. I'll end with this, just one last thought. The greatest lie that you and I are going to face in our Christian walk, our walk with God, is this. Somehow, the enemy is going to try to convince you that you're supposed to have your best life here and now. And I know that this is a message that is being taught and being preached at some churches. At least that's not what the Bible actually teaches. In fact, the truth of the matter is, and this is according to Jesus, you'll have troubles. You'll have many, many, many troubles because you have chosen to follow me. But once again, according to Paul, he calls these troubles momentary. Just a short one. He says that those troubles are actually achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. The song that we sang, or we're going to sing today, just as a wrap-up, is actually from chapter 5 It's at the end of the chapter. It's the song that is being sung right now in this moment by the 24 elders, and thousands of angels are actually declaring this. And the core of the song is that Jesus, the Lamb of God, who was slain, He purchased us from every people, tribe, and nation, and then He has made us. He has made you and me to be a kingdom and priests to serve God, and we will reign on the earth. That's the promise. That's our future prophetic vision. One day, we'll wipe away every tears. One day He'll explain to us why it had to happen this way and how those things produce good in us for those people that belong to Him. So, my invitation to you today, this is not just a vision for John, but it's for us. We're living in this season, this end time. When things get hard, when you're going through troubles, you have to go back to this vision of the throne and the scroll. You have to remind yourself, because we're so easy to forget, prone to forget. There is actually a seat of authority where God is sitting, where all of the universe has to answer to. And He has never lost control. Nothing happens outside of His good and perfect. And this will give us strength to endure, to persevere, and to overcome. Let's have the worship team come back, and we're going to wrap up our time with time of prayer and worship. It's just John. John and the Holy Spirit lead us.
It's me and the whole congregation. Why don't we stand? We're going to sing this song. I don't know if the lyrics have been on and off on the screen today. But this song actually is the right song for a day like this because the verses of the song are a series of questions. And so what we can do if they're not on the screen is I'll sing the question and you can just sing the response. It's okay? All right. So this might be a new song for many of you. So it goes like this. You feel the world is broken, and then everyone can sing the response. We do, all right? Let's sing this together. Do you feel the world is broken? We do. Do you feel the shadows deepen? We do. Do you know that all the darkness of the light from getting through? We do. Do you wish that you could see it all with me? There's a new creation coming. It's the glory of the Lord, the light within our faith. Is it good that we remind ourselves of this? Sing together, is anyone worthy? Is anyone worthy? Is anyone whole? Is anyone able to break the seal and open the scroll? The Lion of Judah, who conquered the grave, He is David's root and the Lamb who died to ransom the slain. Is He worthy?
side. Oh, forever those we love, we love. Does our God intend to dwell again with us? Is anyone worthy? Is anyone worthy? Is anyone whole? Is anyone able to break the seal and open the scroll? The Lion of Judah, who conquered the grave, He is there in His room, and the Lamb who died to ransom the slave. Is He worthy? Is He worthy of all blessing and honor and glory? Is He worthy of
We're going to end a little differently today. I'm going to encourage you to just get into groups of 3 or 4 people. And again, you're free to share, free to pray, free to listen. But if you can just get into groups of a few around you, I'm going to give you a few moments to do that. I've said a lot this afternoon, but if I can just summarize everything that we looked at, just in one phrase or one sentence, it is God saying to us, do not lose heart. Take heart, because I do care. Because I see your pain and I see what you're going through. So I don't know what your season you're in. Some of you might really be going through a really hard time. Some of you are carrying some burdens that feel like too heavy. Some of you are in that place where you feel like, does God really care about my life right now? Is He really present in my life? Well, the answer is, according to what John sees in this vision, yes, He does. And yes, He is. Yes, He's there for us. So tonight, before we break into fellowship, I'm going to encourage you, just if you carry some burdens or if you've been really going through some hard times, just share it with one another. Hey, I'm really having a hard time right now. This is what I'm going through. Can you pray for me? And as we do that, I think God is going to really minister to us and give us strength to endure and persevere through the season, and then we'll wrap up our time. I know that some of you are here for the very first time, or you're just really new to our community. You don't have to share if you're uncomfortable, but just join in the prayer. You don't have to say the prayer, but let's do this as a community today. And I think this is really going to please the Lord, and He's going to really hear us and show up. So let's spend some time praying, and then we'll wrap up our time. Okay? And you can do that online if you're joining us through Zoom.